Greetings, listeners. Adam here with a little bit of admin this time. First off, this episode, like many episodes released during the school year, had a little bit of a crunch time while editing, so it's a little woolly, but I'm optimistic about having gotten better and more efficient about the process, so hopefully it won't be very noticeable at all. More importantly, though, with the formal, official, verbal introduction of Mavia last episode, we didn't want to put a disclaimer ahead of that one that might signal that she would be showing up before the episode even started, but we nonetheless thought her reappearance warranted a few words before we went any further. Mavia's nature is, particularly at this point in the campaign, not entirely clear to the characters, the players, nor even the GM, but we can say unequivocally that she's not intended to be a representation of dissociative identity disorder, other specified dissociative disorder, nor especially plural identity or experience in the real world. Hopefully, as our listeners continue on the journey of this campaign with us, and Mavia's exact deal, so to speak, becomes clearer to all involved, we here at Dice Punks will have done a creditable job at making sure that we're not representing or seeming to represent, nor misrepresenting, such real-world experiences through Mavia's decidedly supernatural role in our story. But as always, we welcome fully your input about how good or bad a job we're doing at these sort of things. We're always striving to improve. And while we're at it, special thanks to patron and listener Denois for their input where Mavia is concerned. So then, without further ado, we'll get to the episode. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to Dice Punks, the tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 11, our nobilis have arrived in Terra Incognita in search of the source of Fury's distress. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hey, I'm Drew. I'll be playing Dosktir, the Duke of Nothing, who may get to use his haggle skill more than he has previously. Or not. We'll see.
I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Alyssa Crate, the piratey and plucky Duchess of Fury.
Excellent. Thank you. Before we get started, though, let's briefly recap any character stat growth, of which I think we have some this week, and the events of the previous episode for ourselves and our listeners. So to start off with, anybody spending any divine or mortal XP this time?
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes from both.
All right. So, Lissa, let's start with you. What are we doing?
To recap some experience points gained last episode, forgot to mention that because her craving and problem are triggered, she gets a temporary miracle point and domain, and also extra mortal experience point as well, correct?
Correct, yeah. For those listeners at home, her duty is to inflict madness and wreak vengeance. Her craving is to release her fury. And so between them, they have given her an extra mortal XP and a temporary miracle point, which I believe that you have put in domain.
This is correct. Thanks to her handicap / problem, which is bouts of Mavia.
Sudden onset Mavia.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and spend my 3 divine experience points to level up her spirit to 2.
Yeah, so in Nobilis, divine XP are relatively few and far between, but they don't go up in expense as your stats improve. So getting her spirit from 1 to 2 is just 3 experience points. And with that, Mavia's spirit shines out. Lissa's spirit, sorry. Shines out through her more brightly than ever. I believe that takes you from, what were you before? Hearthfire to Sunfire?
Incandescent flame.
Yeah. So that's fun. Dosk, any XP expenditure?
Indeed, I'm going to say while rowing out to Terra Incognita, Dosk thinks about the things that have saved his bacon. So I'm going to spend 3 divine XP to up my domain to 5. which I think gives me a new
realize-
title. I'm no longer the Duke of Nothing. I lied to you moments ago, listeners, when I said I was the Duke of Nothing, when in fact I had already become the Regal of Nothing. Or is it Regal?
Nothing's regal. I think it's regal.
Okay, well then that.
This is all because the feminine of it when it's wished to be used is Regina.
Oh, that makes sense.
So one day perhaps Lissa could become Fury's Regina.
That is a good title. So then
There are also interchangeable ones. You could be Monarch or Queen as well.
Ooh, Queen
Bright-
of Fury.
Bright and terrible as the dawn. Okay, and then I think related to the bacon saving, I'm also going to spend 5 mortal XP to up my expert die with my Mombele to a master die.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, so now, if there are no penalties assessed, you will never miss with your Mombele again. If there are penalties assessed, who knows?
I
Yes,
need
and
to
I'm,
give some Electo love next time.
I don't think Electo feels neglected. That was,
No.
that was harder to say than I anticipated.
Electo has not been neglecto. All right.
I'm writing
Well-
that down in the session notes. And also as a note
That's all I
to
ask.
our lovely Hollyhock god, it's incandescent flame did not fit on the character sheet without messing up the formatting, so it just says flaming hot instead in spirit.
Oh, eyebrows. for sure.
I look forward to Lissa correcting people.
So, some meaningful stat growth, I think, for the first time in this campaign. So you've been dragon-like hoarding your divine and mortal experience for a while. I mean, I think we've actually spent some mortal experience before this, but now we have some truly meaningful growth. I mean, with Dosk's expenditures there, I think pretty substantially, you can now do both lesser destructions and major divinations for free.
Which I imagine is going to come in very handy and is especially useful now. It's useful long term, but it's also useful short term because I don't have any domain miracle points at the moment. I am tapped out
Exactly.
after the voyage, which we'll describe in more detail in a moment, I believe.
Yes, indeed, that is Dosk's summary this time. So if you'd like to get started, take it away.
Okay, so after I stroke my scar and stroke my Mombele and realize I'm better with that now and that I can hopefully avoid too many more cool scars, I also remember that I took some notes while I was alone in the hold. So here are some voyage notes from the Journal of Dusktear. So there was a voyage.
Real quick.
Yes.
You weren't in the hold. You were in your cabin. You were confined to it, but you weren't a prisoner.
Sure. Yeah, whatever he said. Who took the notes here? Who gets to write history?
By all means, carry on.
So, there was a voyage, and it was going well aboard the Swift of Therrit. We heard a familiar song. A waterspout seemed to be gaining on us. Lissa gave the ship unnatural haste, whilst I dampened the Ray's song. We saw Philia again, and she was not pleased to see us. Lissa yeeted herself into the sea, becoming not Lissa. Turbulence at the prow of the vessel for a time. A scar from an encounter with a Ray. Oh, please let it be fetching. I attacked Philia. Mavia made herself manifest and made short work of Philia. Mavia would be not Lissa, though perhaps it was Lissa. More to come. She made quite short work of Philia, as I said. I dropped the ocean out from under the spout, making it a whirlpool, which nonetheless pursued us. Mavia and this furious ocean thing that was the whirlpool seemed to get along. I managed to snap the tension between them just a bit, but that did not sever the connection between Mavia and the thing. It strengthened it, if anything. I invented some new form of verse in the process. Ramulus, as it was known, then bore us to our destination. It was not pleasant, but it was fast. It left us beached upon a sandbar, and Lissa skipped like a stone, landed back on deck. The captain was unhappy about the sandbar until I negated it. Now we have a week to trade our many goods. We see plumes of smoke as we arrive on the shore.
Indeed. And for the record, right, this is not like, oh god, there's a forest fire over the peaks. These are like, habitation. The peaks themselves are quite high and quite rocky. And the sloping starts very quickly in from the shore. not quite fjords where the mountainsides just plunge into the ocean, but very steep rocky coast nonetheless. There are no passes immediately in evidence, though if you were to head directly northwest of where you've landed, you would be going in more or less the direction of the distress that Fury is feeling currently. It is getting less precise, though, as you near. It seems like it's not a point so much as it is an area. And that's where we rejoin you guys, is standing on the shore of this unknown country in the early afternoon. Not exactly chilly, but certainly colder than Therret was when you left it. Sort of mildness on the shore with the breeze whipping in from the ocean, and the scrub kind of rippling and undulating on the land between you and these peaks.
Well, I suppose we'll rely on your sense. Does it still pull at you, this attack on Fury itself?
Yeah, it's coming from, and I just gesture in the direction of the smoke, that region.
I give a small, playful bow to the gesture, and we set off in that direction, I suppose.
Do you think that whoever is here has baths?
It is my most fervent hope that they do, but I can't claim to know.
I spent 2 days in a whirlpool eating ocean flapjacks, and I'm pretty sure I've got siren bits in my siren bits, so that would be nice.
Yeah, about those siren bits, when you were her, did you, if this is a rude question, please feel free to rebuff me, but did you eat those things?
I think I did, based on what I pulled out of my teeth and the fact that what came back up after I came to. I'll put it that way. I assume you're asking about the siren bits I ate and not the other siren bits.
Indeed.
Those are doing fine.
Okay. Good. All right. Let's hopefully find ourselves a bath, and even more hopefully some relief for what you've been subjected to.
So, following the direction of the distress that Fury is in will lead you directly up the slopes, like climbing just mountainsides in the Rocky Mountains is a good kind of analog for this.
Can I use a major divination to sound for a pass, i.e. a nothing where a mountain could have been?
A major divination, you say?
I mean, now that they're free.
I believe, yeah, that's going to be free for you now, so you certainly could. Actually, describe what you do.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think I tell Lissa that whatever we've just gone through has made me more keenly aware of what it is I think I can do. And then I probably get a little carried away with myself. I plant my feet unnecessarily in the sand. I splay my arms unnecessarily around me. I look at the mountains, and I envision them as though from both above and the inside at the same time, as though I'm drawing some sort of multidimensional map that does not yet exist, or building a model, perhaps, and I see if I can feel where there isn't mountain, but passable something.
Mm-hmm. And sure enough, your divination, your senses expand to discover an absence of these rocky, inhospitable peaks some way to the northeast. The shore that you're on runs basically southwest to northeast. Not perfectly, but, the general trend is in that direction. So if you follow the coast to the northeast, you will find a pass that will lead you kind of back westward, you think, towards the direction that Lissa has given you. Or at the very least, allow you to get through this first range of peaks and see what the lay of the land is. And if you actually turn and look up the coast, toward the northeast, you can see that there is a sign of habitation. There is a little haze of smoke coming up in that direction as well. You're not entirely sure how far that will be, but it can't be that far if you can see the smoke.
What I was going to say was, what this route lacks in directness, it may gain in navigability, and perhaps even, I direct attention toward the smoke, baths.
I applaud Dosk gamely and say that was very impressive to witness.
You set off up the shore. The sand doesn't make for great footing. It's gritty, but it gives a lot. So you kind of move up a little bit. There's some sort of like kind of shale, like somewhat broken, somewhat uneven, but a lot firmer footing before you get to where there's this like vibrantly green but kind of scrubby grass with some various kind of small trees and bushes growing from it periodically. You feel like this area probably gets plenty of sun and plenty of water, but maybe doesn't have a ton of soil for supporting plant life, and so you head off kind of up the coast in that direction, and it's a decent little walk. Alyssa sort of straightens her tricorn hat and gets underway. For those of our listeners who don't remember last time, Alyssa is dressed pirately now, having bought some clothes from some various sailors after her last ones were waterlogged and blood-soaked. But you take off, and you spend most of the afternoon walking. Is there anything in particular that you wish to discuss or do during that interval, or shall we just skip to the end of the journey?
I'm probably going to have Dosk bring me up to speed, and we don't necessarily have to roleplay this on what occurred while I was under the sea.
I probably recount the events as best I know them, but I emphasize, and we don't have to say the exact words, but I emphasize that there's things I don't know that neither you nor I could possibly, that Mavia might be the only one who does, because you were, after all, under the sea. But it seems you reached some kind of accord with the whirling fury sea thing.
Oh, yeah, Rhymulos. I do remember their name.
I could hear you and them when I spoke in the right way, and it was a strange way I had to speak, but you seem to understand each other.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
To lighten the mood, Daska recounts his death metal verses, though he doesn't, of course, call them that. But he as they're walking, he's doing some kind of stuff.
I once again applaud.
I feel extremely seen and vindicated and creative.
I feel like there should be a hand gesture to accompany this new form of music that you created. Like, applause doesn't quite feel right for the mood.
That's a fine point, and I feel that it's correct instinctively. So I play with different combinations of hand gestures, and I'm probably...
I also do it as well. Should we roll to see if we come up with horns?
What do you propose rolling to come up with throwing up the horns? Give me an argument here for what you should roll.
Let's see.
One could make an argument for inspire.
Inspire. Mm-hmm. I was gonna think that, like, isn't... I'm trying to think of something that I could also slightly set myself up for success with. Charm and fascinate, because it's supposed to be a way of kind of responding to a performance.
I feel like that's a little bit of a
Stretch.
Slantwise use of the fascinate roll. I would allow command inspire or command intimidate, I think.
Okay.
I could do command inspire.
I'll do command intimidate, and let's see how they both go.
Do I still have my master die?
You still have your master die.
Yes! We're going to do it! Oh, damn. I just
There's
rolled
a difficulty
one.
on this.
Yeah, I have 2 1s, so I probably was not successful.
We're inventing tiny pieces of American Sign Language, though, if we film.
I accidentally sign I love you.
Aww.
It's actually closer than you might think. I got 2 3s.
Yeah. Okay. You guys, end up with like hang 10 and you feel like there's work to be done, but you end up having to shelve it because by that time you have rounded sort of like a little bit of a cape where a jut of foothills pushes out into the ocean a little bit, and you round the corner and you are faced with a village, a relatively prosperous looking one by your standards. It's probably a little smaller than Lissa's hometown of Laurentun, but is every bit as industrious. A lot of timber homes, just floor to ceiling wood shingles, wood siding, wood doors. Some of the larger buildings, though, are made out of like baked brick. And there are jetties going out into the surf, and you can see a lot of people moving around. They tend to be dressed fairly simply. Men and women alike wear sort of shirt and trousers, seemingly made of wool and mostly homespun. And the primary activities seem to be based around fishing and diving for oysters and clams and various kind of maritime pursuits. Notably, there are no like full docks or harbor or anything. It's in a relatively sandy, relatively shallow sort of beach that this village is located, although the larger buildings are further up on the slope in kind of the grassy scrubland. And they seem to be going about the business of people who live along a shoreline. A lot of small fishing boats coming in with the catches this time of day. The people themselves seem to be almost uniformly fair-skinned, although there's a very large variety of hair colors. And as you get closer, especially to Lissa, they seem relatively short. Not like, extremely diminutive, but not particularly tall. Dosk, you probably do not clock the same
Sure.
stature observation.
I do note with some relief that this is not some sort of land of giants. Which I admit to myself was never likely, but until this moment was possible.
So you guys are still a little bit of a walk out. You're seeing sort of the panorama here of this village, and they don't seem to have noticed you yet, but unless you say otherwise, I assume you approach.
Can I, before we wholly approach, can I do a lesser divination of fury to see if there's any of the outskirts of the attack on my domain impacting this village?
Interesting. Go ahead. Is there anything in particular you do, or is there any particular question that you are pursuing? Like, question, I mean like wording.
So I'm imagining the area where Fury is under attack as being like, if you imagine your map in a video game, it's like a blue circle. So I'm just trying to see if any of the outside of the blue circle falls over this village.
It kind of does. It's imprecise, but you feel the discomfort, the splinter in your mind, as I believe I referred to it before, sharpen into a pain again as you approach. It seems to be that there is not so much like a circle on a minimap, as you were saying, but it's kind of resolving in your head that it's emanating from people, which makes sense, because people feel fury. And as you close in on this village, you feel that discomfort sharpen into pain again.
In the terms of pain, is it enough to make me double over? I probably cringe at the very least, but I'm just getting a grasp on how much pain it is compared to the first assault on Fury.
Yeah, the first assault was pretty bad. It hasn't changed, but you have learned to manage it. As you approach, it starts to get to be not like, but kind of on the same basic tier as like a migraine. You can function, but it's hard to ignore.
I pull my tricorn down ever so slightly and mention to Dosk, we're getting close. It seems like the outer edge of where Fury is under attack, or the general area is partially in this village. I think it's these people.
Well, I'm sorry, but good. I mean, maybe a solution is close at hand. What do you think are the odds they speak Taraxan?
I wouldn't bank on it.
Well, let me do the
Given
talking
your-
if you're being attacked. You were saying, though.
Given your talent with speaking with your hands, I would advise you take the lead on this. Also, I feel like I have a migraine.
As my uncle, who now you've met once, said, nervous energy is something of a universal language.
I like the idea of Melissa saying that.
How much did he mean it? Neither we nor he will ever know. Okay. Okay, so I think we approach maybe with me a few paces in front.
Okay.
We look for somebody who looks friendly, relatively speaking.
As you get closer, you observe that there is increased activity in the village, and a delegation seems to come out to meet you. What you assume to be relatively well-dressed woman, maybe 5'6", relatively solidly built, and hair is light, but in comparison to the people behind her, probably kind of sun-bleached as well. Skin is fair but tan. She's got kind of these piercing green eyes. She's dressed in woolens, but not seemingly homespun, and relatively richly dyed, and has a little medallion with some very delicate filigree on it around her neck. Behind her are what appear to be just kind of everyday villagers, but they're all holding spears with pretty fine steel spearheads on them. They're not pointing them at you, they're just holding them at rest and kind of watching you slightly nervously. And they come out of the village a little ways and then stop and wait for you to approach. Is there anything in particular about your approach you wish me to note?
Yes, I think I'm trying to remember all the tips I've ever learned, being from a merchant family, for not seeming threatening. And in fact, I'm probably remembering some lectures that I got, maybe a bit angrily, about how there are certain kinds of graces that are all but universal. Eye contact, but not too much eye contact. A posture that is confident, but not aggressive. And I think maybe I roll charm plus graces, let's say, to see how much of this I can remember.
To ask you to do that. So yeah, roll your 5-die charm plus graces pool.
All right. That is 2 6s.
Most excellent. I believe that becomes 2... Oh, no, it's charm. Yeah, charm. Yeah, 7s. 2
7s on account of being... Yes, thank you for saying it. Say it again.
Say it.
Striking sad voice.
Yes!
So, yes, you adopt all of these postures. Lissa?
I'm just going to give them my best smile and a wave. A tiny wave. So as not to draw any attention to my scale.
Yeah. Just trying to seem non-threatening, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and as you draw close, do you want to say anything in particular?
Was that? Oh, you're pointing at me. Okay, I thought you were saying, I have something to say. Okay.
No, I'm pointing at you.
You're pointing at me in Discord, which the listener on multiple levels can't be aware of. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think I give out a greeting in Taraxan to see if they'll respond. So I say something along the lines of, pleased to meet you on a lovely day. I'm assuming this is a lovely day here.
Sure. It seems kind of lovely to you, at least for hiking in. It's like cool with a breeze, but not like cold. It's not like biting.
And nobody's,
the sun is out.
They're wearing warm stuff,
fierce.
But they're not bundled up. So I assume this is nice.
So you give your greeting, and the woman in front kind of looks a little bit perplexed and says, "Qu'est-ce tu le meicula? Qu'est-ce tu le vivapa?"
Okay, so do I recognize any of that? I could roll language plus lore maybe to decide if I like, or is that just a hard no? Like this is total gibberish as far as I'm concerned.
It's a hard no.
Okay.
There is no. I mean, it's clearly a question.
Sure,
but beyond that, you have no inkling.
Is anything about nothing the universal language? Nervous energy, which I have in abundance, may be, but that may not convey anything specific. me think about this for a second. And feel free to
Yeah,
mark
go
her
for
in
it.
case this is too much thinking for a general audience.
Already did.
Okay, good. You know me so well. Well, I guess quick table talk then. What's our play if we don't speak someone's language? Have we ever thought about this in terms of our powers?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
Usually just grinning and trying to charm them with my winsome demeanor is the play, regardless of language.
And you're not
So-
feeling your best.
Yeah.
Mechanically, what I will point out is that miracles of aspect affect not only the body, but the mind.
Sure.
So if you wanted to pick up a
Mm.
language preternaturally quickly, miracles of aspect would be one way to do it. Now, to be clear, we're talking about level like 5 or 6 aspect miracles to just be like, I think I know what they're saying. But if you wanted to spend some time trying to learn the language with them, then maybe like level 2 or 3 would do it. Because again, it can accelerate your mind as well. Now, if you wanted to stick just to mortal attributes, right? Things like knowledge lore and sense scrutinize would help, provided that you had the cooperation of native speakers. Otherwise, and again, you've exchanged exactly 2 statements at this point. What you do next is going to probably determine how helpful in learning their language these locals will be.
Sure. Did we establish whether
I'd
we
also
brought...
like to point out that learning languages is skill points, and you need mortal XP for it. So,
Of course it is. And of course we do. Damn my warlike nature. Okay.
I still have mortal skill points, so Alyssa may become our cunning linguist.
In more ways than one.
I just caused Adam physical pain.
You did.
and joy, but yes, pain as well.
Okay, so I would need skill points to learn a language permanently. But
Correct.
is there some degree in which like an aspect miracle could, I don't know, there are humans in the real world and presumably in this world who can get stuff from context better than normal. So if I do
Sure.
one of these lower level aspect miracles and perhaps roll lore / knowledge on top of it, is there a
Even
possibility of
without-
my getting by in heavily accented whatever they're speaking?
So even without having a skill in this particular language, you have 4 dice in your knowledge stuff.
Sure.
So you could succeed on a roll to communicate, which means that using an aspect miracle is well within the realm of possibility, because lower level aspect miracles just max out your rolls, and then slightly higher level ones bring you beyond what you would be capable of with your mortal stats.
Sure.
So there is room to improvise here.
Okay.
At the moment, there have probably been about 20 seconds of the 2 of you and this village headwoman or whoever she is kind of like staring consideringly at each other and just thinking hard.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. So a level 1 aspect miracle would already sort of like max out the roll, is that right? Or would that be a level 2?
That would be, if you wanted to use a level 1 aspect miracle, that would max out the roll that you could make given your
Okay.
skills.
And this is a one shot deal, or this sort of persists for a conversation at least?
I think we could make it persist for a conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to use the aspect miracle point.
Okay.
And that means that I essentially get the best roll that I could possibly get on my knowledge plus lore, which is 7 dice.
Yeah, I think it'd probably just be a knowledge roll by itself.
Okay.
This isn't really a lore.
That's fair.
But that would be 4 dice, which is still 4 10s, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And so as you invoke this miracle, the woman says, Kasarai mail kilt. And you are starting to observe some things about this language. Compared to Taraxan, it's pretty monotone. There isn't a lot of intonation, and it goes at a very fast clip. And you can still hear the intonation of a question, although it's muted compared to what you're used to. And the volume changes more than Taraxan would throughout the sentence. You're not entirely sure what that means just yet, but you think, based on context and the repetition of the Mei in her original question and this question now, that she was asking if you understand her or speak your language, or speak her language rather, and is sort of trying to decide what your starting point is here.
I think I say May while putting a hand on my chest and say...
She immediately shakes her head and puts her hand on her chest and says, Mina.
So I do my hand on my chest, I say Mina, and then prepare to point at her if she corrects me. But
she just nods.
Okay, Mina, and then I make somewhat some universal sign for peaceful and friendly. A spreading of arms, a dosky facial expression, and I say the word trade in Taraxan because I have no idea what the word would be for them.
She sort of squints at you for a moment and then goes, Mina, pointing, like gesturing to herself, and then points at you, like not with a finger, but kind of like with an open hand, and says, Sina, and waits for you.
What's going on?
We're faking it as best we can. They speak something that I don't fully understand, but I'm coming to understand at nearly a toddler level.
I kind of gesture to my face, like one of like whole face hand, and then my chest, and say, "Lissa."
The woman nods, seeming to understand what you mean. For our listeners at home, I am going to come clean on something. If there are any people listening from Estonia, you are probably really grimacing at my pronunciation. I am listening to, or rather, I am using Estonian as a reference. It is not exactly Estonian, but I am sort of using it as a way of making it sound consistent, and trying to give it a flavor to it.
The Dice Punks team would like to express the deepest respect for the nation of Estonia.
Yes.
Let it be known that Arvo Pärt is one of my favorite composers, though you may be tired of hearing that because everybody loves Arvo
Pärt. So anyway, the head woman seems to understand what you're going for, and she sort of nods and sort of gestures to herself and in her face and says, Raylene.
Raylene?
She kind of nods with a little bit of compunction.
Yeah. I hold out my hand, kind of mimicking her, but mostly palm up, so it's not like a sort of menacing gesture, and say, "Good to meet you," and then repeat her name and smile.
She seems to understand what you're going for, although she looks at your hand a little bit askance, and instead sort of makes a complex gesture with one hand, putting it kind of on her shoulder, and does a slight bow. And gestures kind of back toward the village. She says something very rapidly in a monotone that you don't quite catch, but then gestures for you to follow. And brings you into the village.
She's already turned by the time I've
itself.
made some nightmare sentence, like Mina good meat Sina.
Perfect. A little chef's kiss on my part. You follow her and her guards into the village. It's a fairly modest village, especially by Taraxan standards. If you ventured to the south or north of Kaunas in Taraxis, you would find villages about this scale, but where Lissa came of age in the Vales, villages tend to be larger, more populous than this, and certainly coastal settlements. You can look up and down the coast and see no other sign of settlement as far as you can see. But this one is the size of a small farming village in Taraxas and seems to be the only thing on the coast in this area. Trade apparently is not one of whoever lives here's main occupations. You haven't seen a boat larger than like a small fishing dinghy.
So I guess we just follow Raylene.
Yeah, you follow her into the village. She shows you to sort of like a central square where there is it's kind of a pavilion where there is a sort of wood tiled roof with some supports throughout, just over dirt ground. There are some tables and chairs within, and there are villagers seemingly going about their business here. It's not especially busy or crowded currently, but it seems to be able to hold maybe most of the village, if necessary, which doesn't actually make it huge, but one of the larger covered spaces around. She gestures for you to have a seat. The chairs themselves are interesting. They're very tall. They have short backs and small armrests, but they are very finely worked and of an unfamiliar wood. It's very dark, and seems to have been finished with some kind of wax.
I take a seat and briefly, I don't do the full complicated hand gesture, but I bow like slightly to express my gratitude before taking a seat.
I do likewise and visibly admire the chair as well. I rub the arm of it just a bit and yeah.
Yeah, it's very smooth. They sort of seem to have like polished this wax into the grain. And it seems to be actually quite old, weathered a bit. You can't help but think that this is the sort of woodwork that could sell in Barrett. And Lissa, you have a little bit of a problem in that the seat of the chair is slightly too small for you.
I figured if I like twist it, if I spin it around and then like try to sit, I know that it has armrests, but is there a way for me to make it work?
Your thighs don't fit under the armrests.
Oh.
You tower over everybody in this village. Like, there are probably at least a few people as tall as Dosk. For the listener at home, Dosk is 5'9", but they're among the taller villagers. A short villager is around 5 foot, and they mostly fall in between those extremes. Lissa, for the listener at home, is 6'7". She's almost a foot taller than the tallest person in this village. Almost exclusively, they have fair hair. You see a few people with darker hair. Eyes tend to be blues and greens, and complexions tend toward light, although many of these folks are fairly sort of sun-kissed.
I would like to remind the listener that you probably remember that this affable mountain of a person is also dressed as a pirate.
Oh, yes. And for what it's worth, nobody else is dressed like either of you, obviously. They are wearing pretty plain clothes for the most part, sort of solid dyed homespun. Men and women alike wear sort of knee breeches, usually with just sandals or barefoot, and a sort of wraparound elbow sleeve top with a belt to keep it closed. And that's pretty much it. Some people have hats, mostly made of woven grass or straw. It doesn't look like an especially poor place, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of money that goes into, like, very fancy clothing, like you would see in Calvin or Therret.
Well, I think...
You guys...
No, go for it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I make some attempt... Sorry. No, I couldn't possibly. You first. No, so I make some attempt to say thank you, right? And I probably just say it in Taraxan, but I give a gesture that indicates gratitude and Dosk, by the way, in case for those who don't remember, is curious beyond any reference to reason. So is probably enjoying way too much learning like toddler level vocabulary for whatever this language is. So we'll pick up whatever he can, even skill point aside.
Yeah, you are picking it up as fast as you can with your miraculously sort of enhanced abilities here, and you are able to get the sense of simple sentiments, the chatter of people passing by. No hope. One of the things that you do pick up, though, is that the local language is rapid, and to a Taraxan ear sounds kind of monotone. You think that shifts in volume and rate of speech are taking the place of shifts in pitch and tone that you would expect in Taraxan.
So Dosk being Dosk, I'm attempting to do that even when I say simple Taraxan phrases. So thank you, and
Yeah. You sort of modulate your volume to try to fit the sense of things. And as you all are sitting here, even just for a few moments, you start to draw a bit of a crowd. You stick out, especially Alyssa. Although it shouldn't be undersold how much Dosk's wardrobe sticks out.
I respectfully remove my tricorn.
The village head woman, or whatever her role actually is, sort of manages to chat a little bit with some of her attendants, turns to Dosk and Lissa and starts to sort of try and figure out a way to communicate broadly, kind of moving a little bit at a rapid clip. You manage to indicate your names. She seems to ask where you come from. She uses just kind of pointing at things to kind of convey the idea of where. And Dosk, you manage to basically point in the direction out over the ocean, and she looks pretty impressed. She goes on a bit of a monologue that you don't quite catch all of, but you just kind of like nod and look impressed. And she looks a little bit thoughtful, and then sends somebody off kind of in a direction, and seems to ask a question. I think that I want Dosk to make a knowledge roll to see if you can get the sense of this question based on what you've accomplished so far in terms of interpretation.
It's reasonable.
So that's going to be 4 dice.
Make it a roll. Damn, 2 zeros. Or 2 10s, I should say.
Excellent. So she asks a question that has a lot of words in it, but you kind of get the sense from the last bit that she's asking why you have come. Mixolote mea malatumid? Mixolote mea diamakor? And you glean from that, why have you come here? Why have you come to us? Why have you come to our place or our country? And the second question, you think you actually got the name of the place. Diamakor. I will put the spelling in.
Thanks for that.
Does Dosk, do you relay this to me?
I do, yeah. I say that I think we know where the name of where we are. And I repeat to her, Diamakor, making a grand gesture to say that I think I know that's here. 2 reasons. I don't know if I know the word for reason, but I hold up 2 fingers, assuming that there's some kind of number system. I say trade again, because I still don't know their word for it, and I maybe tug on my clothes and then stroke the chair, and then... But more importantly, I say, and I don't know if I know the word for important either, and I say treatment, and I point to Lissa.
She looks thoughtful. Lissa?
I like where your head's at, but maybe let's keep that second one on the hush-hush end of things. I have an idea in terms of how you're trying to tell them that you want to trade, And I take off some of my bangles. I'm like, do you have any coins on you? I'd say that to Dosk.
Oh, yeah.
Dosk.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I was like, wow, she has coins. Yeah, no, so I extract, I probably let's take the shotgun approach. Coins from a few different lands that I probably keep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth much, but it expresses the idea of coins. Whatever, if they've ever seen a coin, there may be one that looks like one they've seen.
Yeah, so I pantomime holding out my wares, which is, of course, one of the many bangles and shiny things that I have on, and then look at Dosk.
I mutter an apology for spilling the beans about the situation, and then nod furiously and take out the coins and possibly palm them in an interesting way.
So once you pantomime trading for coins, a light bulb goes on over a lot of bystanders' heads, Raylene included, and she sort of nods and asks a few rapid-fire questions that Dosk, you are kind of unable to keep up with, but then stops, seemingly mid-sentence, and nods to herself and speaks more slowly, which probably the first time she's done that, probably the first time anyone has done that. This language goes very rapidly in comparison to Taraxan, and she points up northwest out of town, and then points at the two of you and points at her arm, seeming to signal that you'll need to travel up into the mountains to do trading.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I nod in understanding and bow again.
I do the same, and while bowing,
gives you
I mutter to Alyssa, is that where the tug? Do you think the center of,
Yes, that's exactly where it's coming from.
She gives you the little bow again in response, and then calls to some of her attendants, gestures to you, speaks rapidly. You lose the plot entirely and find yourselves led in short order to what appears to be kind of a bunkhouse. Since the sun has gone down while you have been doing this, and you've been kind of talking by lamplight a little bit, you seem to have been shown beds for the night. And in short order, somebody comes with sort of open-faced fish sandwiches for dinner. The bread is unusually thin and crispy by Taraxan standards, but is pretty tasty.
I will say, before we were ushered out of the meeting house or wherever we were, I did insist that the head woman keep one of the coins from God knows where.
She seems both mystified and grateful, but keeps it.
I would leave her with one of my bangles too, upon seeing Dosk do that.
When you lose sight of her, she is sort of turning it over in her hands, looking at it in a mix of fascination and seemingly consternation that doesn't really add up to you.
We'll take Fasternation for now. Yeah.
So, it is odd and interesting sleeping in an entirely new, continent as far as you can tell. But you're pretty tired, honestly.
Makes sense. Is there a place in the building where we find ourselves quartered that looks like it might contain baths?
Not really. There is a necessary, but there's no, bathing apparatus.
Kiwi's making noises.
I was taking it as the sound of Lissa being
his
disappointed
right.
about going to bed without a bath, but psychologically.
Yeah. I imagine, though, she looked gracious for the sandwich when it was brought to her. As soon as the person left, she probably stared at it long and hard.
It's a pretty good sandwich. You don't know exactly how they seasoned this fish, but there's clearly something on it. It's kind of a little smoky and kind of spicy for Taraxan food. Not painfully so, but it's got a little heat to it. Presumably, then you arise in the morning. Do we have any particular desires or tasks before heading up into the pass?
I don't think so. We make sure that our gratitude is expressed in whatever clumsy way we can manage it. We probably confirm that we're going in the right direction, that we probably don't have to, because Lissa probably knows, at least in a rough way, and there probably aren't too many navigable roads anyway. So there may be nothing left but to say thanks as best we can.
Yeah, you feel fairly confident that you express your gratitude to Raylene, and you head up into the pass, which is kind of a road. Like, it's just packed dirt, rocky, a lot of sort of kind of shimmering from worn, chipped mica in it as you head up. But the pass itself is pretty green. The road going up into it is sort of worn down, and then it narrows substantially until you're sort of walking between not like sheer rock faces, but just sort of rocky slopes, about 20 feet apart on either side. In some cases, it widens substantially once it flattens out, but you're climbing for a while. Like, you're not, going up to a peak, but these mountains are tall, and this pass is not particularly low. It's just mostly soil, if rocky soil, and a manageable incline. No one from the village comes further than a couple 100 yards from the village with you. Raylene is the sort of last person to bid you goodbye, and she's, again, speaking what probably counts as slowly in the local tongue, but still pretty quick by Taraxan standards. She says a few words that you recognize and a few that you don't. She welcomes you to Diamachor, and you think you have picked this up correctly, thanks you for visiting Ivapa. You think that's probably the name of the village, based on the context in which it's used. And she wishes you a good journey, based on her gestures, at least. That's what it seems like she's doing. And then she turns around and heads back to the village, leaving you to ascend the pass unaccompanied.
Yeah, I mean, again, we mutter our thanks, and we probably express enthusiasm about the hospitality as best we can, which is probably quite badly.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to get communicated anyway.
Good.
So I probably at this point check in with Lissa and see how the discomfort is. Is it growing as we approach? Which again would be both good and bad, I suppose.
It is, for what it's worth.
I respond in the affirmative, and then I kind of glance back at where we came from and said, "They seem nice."
They seem incredibly nice. Do you think that's potentially part of the problem?
And if it is that something we want to fix?
If that were the problem, I can't think of an especially good way to solve it, which is to say a way that I'd feel good about. Perhaps we cross that bridge when we come to it.
We'll burn that bridge when we get there.
Well said.
So, it takes you guys pretty much a whole day to ascend and then cross the pass, but by the time the sun is setting kind of ahead and to one side of you, just touching the peaks of the mountains, you are looking at, frankly, a marvel. The mountains in Taraxas are all in the desolation. These are dry, relatively cold, rocky slopes. Here, though, the mountains are much lusher. And you sort of come to the crest of the pass, and you come out to where the sort of rock faces on either side of you expand out into slopes, arcing out to your left and right. And you find that you are looking at, it would be hard to call it a veil, as that undersells the scale of it. You're looking at a large bowl amid peaks. There are steep slopes and rocky peaks ringing this area. For reference, if you're on perfectly flat ground, for Earth, flat. The best you can hope for in terms of visibility on a clear day is about 3 miles before the Earth curves away from you. The Rocky Mountains are visible from about 100 miles away, if there's nothing in between you and them. And these are akin to the Rockies in terms of height and ruggedness. And so you are looking at a panorama before you, where the land slopes down away from you and then back up on the other side. You're guessing maybe just kind of eyeballing it 50 to 70 miles from where you're standing to the slopes that you can see opposite you. Who knows as far as the width goes? Something similar. It's this massive bowl in these mountains. And about 2-3 miles from where you're standing, you're looking at the shore of a large lake. 30 miles across, maybe, roughly round, with some irregularities in the coast due to the various slopes. And you're basically looking at a small country. There are homesteads and villages scattered throughout this vale. As you sort of look around, you can see buildings and little hazes of smoke coming up from cook fires and things from these various little settlements. There's forest, there's meadow. It's mostly sloped, but they have terraced off the places where they're farming. Relatively nearby, even, you can see flocks of sheep and goats grazing on the slopes. Higher up, you have snowy caps. Below that, you have gray rock faces moving into scrubland, and then thick forest. And then further down, as you get towards the shores of this lake, you can see where there's homesteads, farms, and villages, and terraced fields. You can even see in some places passes leading out of this vale to other places where there are worn roads. And directly across from you, at the edge of the extent of your vision, cloaked in kind of a haze, from moisture in the air, you can see a relatively dim place where something between a valley and a box canyon sort of goes back into the mountains a little ways, and you can see buildings and even the suggestion of lights within it.
So that's probably where the most people are.
Almost certainly.
Can I do a lesser divination and see if it's just this entire area, this entire country, more or less? Or see if it's the attack is localized more towards the I guess city, large.
You close your eyes and you focus and you open your miraculous senses, and yes, this whole people is strangely low on fury. But there's something more to it. You can't put your finger on it. There's like a wound in their fury. And it gets deeper as you approach that city on the other side of this massive bowl. But it's not absent elsewhere.
I relay that information best I can to Dosk. But I leave out for now the fact that it seems to be the people entirely, but that whatever it is, it seems to intensify towards the city.
Well, it sounds like we make for the city then.
Well, you can go to roughly the east, or you can go to roughly the north around this massive central lake. You can even see some small boats out on the lake from where you're standing. It's odd, especially to a Taraxan eye, to be able to see all of this at once, but because the slopes involve let you look down on most of it and up to some of it, you can see much, much further than you could otherwise. And it's hard to make out details further on, but both of you are also superhuman, so there's a little bit of extra sense there to kind of lend clarity to it.
Can we get a sense of how long it would take us to travel by foot without spending aspect miracle points to the city? Since I know this is like 2 days at this point.
Yeah, if you walk flat out, probably another 2 days to get to the city.
Which leaves us with definitely not enough time to get back to the ship before it departs, even if we head back immediately.
So
that's true.
We're either going to have to find more rapid transportation, like have we seen any indications of horses?
Nope.
We're gonna have to spend aspect miracle points. I'm fine with that.
All right.
That's what they're
sure.
for. Also, as we're contemplating this, probably I cannot resist saying a bit of a God's eye view, isn't
it? It's absolutely divine. I wish I could draw. This would be quite a pretty picture.
It is quite beautiful.
All right. So are we simply using aspect miracle points to walk very fast? Just Benny Hill our way around the rim of this place?
I'm trying to think of how we could spend miracle points in a way that would not unduly attract attention, because, may not be the best thing to flaunt miracles in front of a culture that we're not familiar with.
Well, so a level 1 aspect miracle is like high-level human, and the example in the rulebook is actually Olympic long jump. So, I mean, could we basically run, a world record performance would be level 2, so would a level 2 allow us to basically run a mega marathon? Not even a mega marathon, just, keep a run that just looks like we're extremely good at it if you're only looking at it for a few seconds, but in fact we're keeping it up longer than a human could, is the thought.
Yeah, I mean, a level 2 would probably let you get there in a day or so to the city. Kind of just slough off your fatigue and just keep going. At the point where you get to level 4, you're probably talking about like running on water. If you wanted to cut directly across the lake, that would cut your time substantially. But it would definitely draw attention if anybody happened to see you. And if they're further down from where you are in the past, they may not. But if they're on boats on the lake...
Should we go back and tell the captain that we found a city that is most likely willing to trade and try to get ourselves more time because we don't want to get left behind?
That would take the time pressure off. Now, presumably, we're not totally stranded as long as we can find a very, very dark place. But still, having a ship would probably be a comfort.
Yeah, and also the fact that the gates were not able to get us here is slightly concerning.
Because you're right, it's like it's 2 days and change back to the ship at this point. Mm-hmm. So
and if we use aspect miracle points, we probably won't have enough to do that on the way back, and it's like a 3-day trek, you said, from where we are currently to the city, plus another.
Well, it'd be about 2 days from where you are now to the city, give or take.
I was including the days journey that we already tracked.
Yeah, if you wanted to head back, then it would be another 4 days. So you'd be talking 8 days, which probably means the captain would have left you.
Yeah.
By that point.
So we should.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. So we probably, with no small amount of physical and emotional effort, turn away from this beautiful thing and go back down the way we came.
Okay. Yeah. The sight of you coming back into Ivapa, sort of causes a small commotion, but a lesser one than your initial arrival. And Raylene, sort of, makes a show of welcoming you back and seems to ask some questions, but lets you pass through. You sort of communicate that you need to send a message, and she sort of is like, kind of puts 2 and 2 together and is like, oh, they had a boat. Yes, of course, and just lets you pass on. You sort of sleep a little rough. You actually make good time now that you know where you're going. So you pass through Ivapa afternoon of day 1 and, make it to the shore near, the Swift of Theret pretty quickly, row out and update the captain. What specifically are you telling
her? I'll probably lead the talking up to dusk, but I imagine that Lissa chimes in with complimenting the craftsmanship of the wares and the furniture in particular and the friendliness of the people, and the fact that there seems to be a wealth of homesteads and even a city. It was just too far to travel within the time frame that we were given, but is definitely a land where we will be able to find trade.
Indeed, yeah, that's well said. I would say, and I would add that given the craftspersonship we saw in the villages, who knows what wonders we'll find in the city. But if we merely were to trade for some of those chairs, I extol the chairs and their many virtues in flowery language, then even that would be nearly worth the trip in itself. That said, what we have to trade, namely luxury goods, will probably find more purchase, pun intended, in a city than in a village. As such, we need time.
She has a little bit of an avaricious look on her face, and she asks about the feasibility of anchoring near this village.
Nearer.
We could ask.
Nearer, I suppose, but it's still a trek through a mountain pass. It's no small thing, though not as bad as it might have been.
For what it's worth, she was asking about Ivapa.
Oh, totally. Got it.
Rather than the city that you saw.
Got it.
Oh.
So,
unless this boat flies, that seems unlikely.
And I mean, as far as you're aware, they could anchor well off the shore of Ivapa safely.
Sure.
And, have a source of, like, fresh water and shit.
Yeah. Not a bad idea? Unless it is.
There's no way of knowing. They seem nice. They're not angry.
I think it's.
Yeah,
I think it's paramount that we maintain friendly relations with these folks, and they seem perfectly amenable to that. We must be careful not to impose upon their hospitality.
She nods and she says, "Oh, I wouldn't let the sailors off the ship for love nor money. But if we can sail around to where this village is located and we can anchor and start to trade for food and water, that would be helpful. It would allow us to stay a little longer."
A fine plan indeed, Captain.
She nods, pulls up the ship's boat, and sails northeast along the coast. Within a couple of hours, you are rounding the cove into sort of Ivapa's natural harbor, such as it is. The ship can't get super close, and you see some of the villagers kind of reacting to the appearance of this ship. They have nothing like it. You haven't seen a single sail since you've, landed in terms of the, residents of Diamakor. They are entirely rowing, folks. But the ship pulls in. There's a bit of a commotion. You take the ship's boat out, and Captain comes with you. You sort of do a semi-linguistic introduction between Relin and the captain, and you are entertained to note that the captain gives her name to Relin as the captain.
I was reaching for my pen and everything.
But there's sort of a small commotion in that evening as the Swift of Therit gets settled into the harbor, and sort of using props, which the captain seems to have been prepared to do. She negotiates with Relin for the supplying of some fresh water and a little bit of food. She also kind of demonstrates that her sailors are willing to sort of fish for themselves to a certain degree, and are willing to trade some of what they have in their hold for the things that they can't get themselves. And by the time you go back to bed in the bunk that night, you are pretty reassured that there will be a ride waiting for you. You also see, while you're there, that the villagers bathe in the ocean, hence the lack of bathing facilities.
Is there any, so there's a bit of Is there any fresher water? Because I'm probably adverse to...
They have a couple of outlying wells further up the hill, but it's not like there's a private place to go bathe.
Oh, who said anything about private?
Yeah.
This is diplomacy.
They
Didn't
just-
you realize?
They just go out into the ocean first, strip off second, wash, and then walk back up and, get in their wet clothes and head home. They wash at the end of the day, so they don't have to spend a lot of time in their sodden garments. They also don't seem to be particularly bothered about modesty. Like, there is propriety, and they wear, relatively normal clothes, but like, if somebody needs to walk up on the shore to figure out, oh, the leg of my pants was inside out and put them back on, it's not a huge deal. Nobody, like, leers at them.
I probably observing this also take a bath in the ocean at some point, because I realize they may be offended if I'm using drinking water to wash off.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you don't feel especially clean, but like, it's only because of the salt buildup, and they seem used to it. So
yeah, I think Dusk spends some time bathing in the sea as well, and then spends a bit of time taming the absolute cumulonimbus that his hair and beard probably are after a briny bath.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, you spend another night in the bunkhouse, and then you have some time. You can head back up into the pass.
Before we leave, I'll see if I could bother the captain for like a bit of parchment and some charcoal for communication purposes with the people here, because drawing, I think, may be something more easily communicated than trying to speak their language, though Dosk is doing a fantastic job of it.
Yeah. You manage to impose upon her. She'll give you some bits of canvas and some charcoal. She does have a little parchment, but she will not part with it.
Fair enough.
And you haven't seen the locals do any writing, but that doesn't mean they don't have a way to do it. It just means that you don't know how to ask for it.
I tell her, "Thank you, Captain," and wink at her.
She doesn't exactly glare at you, but she does fix you with sort of a piercing gaze.
I flick the brim of my tricorn and like a little half bow gesture and leave.
So anyway, having cleaned up, having provisioned, having gotten your ride situated. So
one thing remains to be done, which is that I tell the captain that now that we know there's a city that is our destination and the trade seems not just likely but nearly inevitable, it may be that I need to take a few of the goods with me as samples or else host gifts, lest we be thought liars.
She nods a little bit grudgingly, but with understanding, and leads you down into the hold. Some of what's in the crates is going to be harder to transport, but things like fine clothing and Godswood's artifacts you can definitely transport.
So I think
just on your person.
So I grabbed some of the clothing, especially, didn't you say they were like furs or something that was like relatively warmish?
Yes.
Okay, so I put a few of those in a satchel. When it comes time to pick the Godswood's artifacts, I definitely consult Lissa and ask which ones are hotter than others.
I would definitely encourage Dosk to take the wolf's head thing, but not let me touch it. And then I also offer, like, kind of pat myself on the back and say, you can load me up with a few things.
Good. So the wolf's head goes in my bag, and a few of the bulkier furs and stuff go into Lissa's pack.
Yeah, you both have a modest backpack of supplies and trade goods as you head up into the pass. You haven't seen horses or oxen here, but you have actually seen goats being used as beasts of burden. They breed them large here. You have goats in Taraxas, but they're not mountain goats. And the goats here seem to be of a burlier nature. And so you get the feeling that the way that a lot of things are transported around here is like on carts or sleds pulled by teams of goats. But you haven't seen that done just yet. In the meantime, you use manpower, or nobilis power as the case may be, and head up back into the pass. You make good time. And by that afternoon, you are looking out into this huge bowl-shaped vale once again. If anything, it's sunnier this time, and you can see the shadows that clouds make kind of patterning themselves across the vale. It's truly picturesque as you head down into it. So, out of curiosity, it's not going to make the biggest difference, and I don't mind telling you that. Do you want to go around the north side or around the east side of the lake?
Are there more people / more settlements on, one way than another, as far as we can tell? And we can probably tell relatively well since we're above.
It looks relatively sort of equivalent. There seem to be fewer homesteads and more villages on the east side, and more homesteads and fewer villages on the north side. More farms on the east side, and more forests on the north side. Though I should hasten to add that neither lacks what the other has in more abundance.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Sure. Okay. I think I probably turn to Alyssa and I say, does one way tug the more, the less? I wish for this to be as quick as possible, though it can't be as quick as I'd like. But I also wish for it to be as pleasant as it can be, all things considered.
If I do a lesser divination, does it give me any indication, or is it just all emanating?
You are surrounded by it. The highest focus is over where that city is, but you can't see from here whether one way is going to be quicker. Maybe the east way would have less in the way of difficult terrain, but it's all pretty sloped.
As we're having a hard time deciding, I extract one of those coins from earlier from my pack and say, represent the northward route, and call it in the air. And I flip the coin.
I call heads as north. Whatever heads may be in the case of this coin.
I don't have an actual coin here, so I don't know if we want to do that. But
yeah.
I think I have a... Oh. Hold on.
I was going to say, I got it.
I think there might be a... Oh, you have it? Okay.
Tails. You use a... Sure, you use a ferret mark. You flip it, and Croesus's face lands downward.
As favorable a sign as I could have asked for.
And instead, there is a hawk diving, and you head east.
Indeed, there is.
Through the slightly farmier lands than otherwise. And away you go. It does take some time before you are sort of passing through any inhabited lands, but you cause quite a stir as you pass through the first village. There are, be improper perhaps to call them roads per se, but paths that sort of then meet up with the roads through villages and around homesteads as you pass through. And the first village is actually about the size of Ivapa. It's surrounded by fields of unfamiliar grains and a couple of orchards of unfamiliar fruit. And as you approach, you can see adults and children both kind of just coming out to behold you.
I smile and wave whenever possible, and if any child gets brave enough to actually approach me, I probably take a ring off of my finger and give it to them.
Oh. So in fact, you do give a girl of maybe 10 a ring off your finger, and she sort of looks at it a little critically, like puts it on her finger. It's far too big. And then sort of looks at it again. And by the time you pass, she's actually trying to tug the semi-precious stone out of the metal fitting. You have seen some evidence of jewelry among these people, even just the farmers, here and there. And as you pass through the village, you notice that the buildings are just timber. They're plank and log walls and wood shingled roofs and unglazed windows, but there are signs of very fine carving and even in some cases filigree on the faces of these buildings. There is a lot of craftsmanship on display in a number of cases. And as you pass through out of the first village, let's see, actually, Lissa, could I get from you a sense plus sight, 2 dice?
No matches, and I haven't done this in a few episodes, so I might as well do it now. Lady Luck kind of thinks Lissa's cute, so I'm going to reroll.
Naturally.
Still no matches.
Luck was not a lady today.
Yeah. You do notice as you are exiting the village that people are watching you in particular. You have not yet seen anybody that is within 6 inches of your height. And so you draw a lot of attention. I don't know, I feel like Lissa probably basks in it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Does the model wave, winks here and there. Especially if someone's catches Lissa's eye. Definite winking.
The people in the Vale here are a little less sun-kissed than the people at the coast, and so they seem almost a little wan to Lissa's relatively swarthy eye. But you can't help but notice, especially after being around Fermatans who don't get any sun whatsoever, that they all seem very healthful with luxurious hair. Ranging from kind of a light brown to platinum blonde in this first village. And so Lissa is all smiles.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch some of their hair. I'd probably mutter something like this within ear range of Dosk, but out of, like, even though they can't understand, out of ear range of anyone.
Sure.
Dosk, nonetheless, is not only trying to learn the words for touch and hair, but any word that he possibly can, taking furious mental and perhaps even literal note of things like the filigree, and when the local kids gather around, favoring them with Taraxan verse, which is probably, in fact, definitely nonsense to them, and the bolder or more morbid kids perhaps even get a bit of death metal.
Well, and so this keeps up for most of the day because there's almost no substantial stretch of time, 15 minutes at most, where you're not passing by some inhabited area. Especially since you're following the paths, they stick a little closer to the lake. The woods are further up the slopes, with unfamiliar evergreens and deciduous trees mixed in. But as it happens, you guys are walking through fields, walking past homesteads, walking through villages, walking through orchards. There are bushes and trees bearing fruit that you are unfamiliar with, you've never seen before at all. As well as some fields of stuff that you can't really identify. Just, low leafy plants that you can't imagine how they become food. Maybe they're for something else. Potatoes.
To tacos.
Oh. There's no potatoes in Taraxas.
Brutal.
No, there are not.
That makes me so sad. Lissa would love to eat potatoes.
Just some fictional stuff too that is just not even available in the real world. Taraxas has some root vegetables, but that's probably the closest analog that you have to some of what you see.
It's here. Like 10,000 turnips when all you need is a potato.
Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Anyway. By the time evening is starting to fall, you're coming into a much larger village where it might be useful to try to bed down for the evening. You note actually, I should probably say listen notes. This feels kind of like the Vales to you, where there are a lot of small, prosperous settlements within about a day's walk of each other that just spread out according to what farmland is being used. Densely populated, but not like concentrated. They're just, the whole area is under some kind of cultivation or another. You wouldn't be surprised if you went up into the forest and found that it was all just sort of maintained and managed by foresters. The town in which you are arriving takes note of you, as the very first one did. It's larger than the first one, although the architecture is not different, and they are all seemingly agrarian families and the attendant artisans that they require. You can look down slope toward the lake and see terraced farming. You can look up slope from the lake and see orchards. And the very first person you see is a young woman, maybe 20, just like sprinting dead heat out of the city towards you with a big grin on her face. When she gets close enough to see you, sort of stops and looks confused, and then turns around and runs back.
Hi, bye.
As you draw close, you notice that a crowd has drawn up at the edge of the town to watch you approach.
I will say, if I know both hi and bye, I repeat that. But in Diamacorin, I don't think I probably know what the language is called.
Probably not too far from what they call it. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
That may or may not elicit any reaction whatsoever, but
it probably doesn't from the woman who came up and left, because she may or may not have heard it. But as you draw up to the crowd, you maybe try again. Tere huvasti? Tere, probably, as you approach. And you sort of see that a bunch of farmers are holding like rakes and hoes, and a bunch of craftsmen are holding like hammers and chisels, and slowly kind of stow them on their belts as you greet them and walk up. And the young woman who had run out to meet you is sort of standing a little bit ahead and gives you that hand over her shoulder, slight bow move again, and then starts rattling off incomprehensibly fast Yamakoran at you.
I definitely respond with the bow, and then probably pull out, like, very slowly and deliberately with a smile, like the canvas and the charcoal, and then kind of look at Dosk and be like, how do I say that we don't speak this language that fast? Do you know slow down? Slow down, please.
Do I know slow down, please? That's one I sure would have tried. I mean, I've probably never heard anyone say it, as useful as it would be for me to say it.
It would have been extremely difficult to pick up in the time that you've had, so no, you don't know.
I can probably say, do I know speak? Because I know the name. I know the name of the place, and I know me, so I can probably put together something that might roughly
me no speak this language.
Pretty much, me no speak this stuff is probably like within.
You probably at least know a form of the verb to speak.
Yeah.
So you could say like me speak. No.
Me speak no goodly. Yeah, something. So, So I explain as best I can that we don't speak the language, but would nonetheless like to communicate.
As you are saying this to sort of the crowd in general, the young woman just sort of like approaches slowly. She's got dark hair for a Diamacan as far as you have seen, which is to say that it is like a sort of middle brown, and she's probably a little taller than 5.5 feet, and she is drawing closer and closer to Alyssa, just like looking up at her.
She's cute.
And seems to be very impressed. older fellow from the group, and these folks are actually dressed more in a combination of wool and leather than the folks at the village of Ivapa were, and they're dressed for agriculture and sort of outdoor work. A lot more hats here, also of leather, and you can see just like livestock milling about. They have dogs as well. In some cases, who are just kind of like hanging back, just looking at the proceedings. But the older man with a little bit of gray in his mustache kind of steps forward and gives you a little bit of a bow, and then sort of like gestures with a little bit of a shrug toward the town. As you start walking in, the young woman is joined by a couple of young men about the same age who are just kind of like clustering around Lissa and speaking among themselves very rapidly and a little bit quietly.
I try to.
You seem to be a hit.
I try to communicate with them and smile gamely and wink whenever it's appropriate. I may also give. I imagine Lissa has a lot of stuff, so I'll give her another one of the rings that Lissa has forged at some point. And just kind of hold it out to her, indicating that it's meant to be a gift.
If you forge this ring, describe it to me.
This one is probably more experimental, so it was sand cast from something that Lissa had made out of wax, and she probably took a lot of wax bands from old candle strips and made it weave and flow in an intricate way. But that's physically stable, but has like almost a lace-like quality to it, and it's just basic. It's basic sterling silver. She might have put some semi-precious stones in some of the negative spaces, but that's it.
You hand it to her, and she sort of looks at it with seemingly a critical eye, and then sort of like nods a little bit and looks up at you and tries to figure out where she can put it. She ends up putting it over her thumb. Which is the only digit that it actually fits on, and kind of flexes a little bit, and then smiles, and runs off. And the young men around her sort of laugh a little bit and start talking, again, very rapidly, much more so than you can understand.
I kind of point to where she went and do one of these, like a shrug, like where? Yeah.
They just laugh again and try to talk to you, but you can't understand it. And by about the time you've arrived at the center of this village, she has come running back, not even seemingly winded either, and hands you a very delicate looking, very slim platinum ring with 3 small but very clear diamonds set in it, and a little bit of etching to either side of the setting, and is giving you what you could best interpret as just a cocky grin.
I see. I kind of allow myself to look astonished at the craftsmanship of this ring, and turn it over in my finger several times just in admiration, and then slide it on whatever finger, probably my pinky finger.
It goes to the first joint of your pinky finger. It will not fit over it.
Yeah, does it fit well there?
Well enough. If you're careful of it, it won't fall off.
Yeah, I put it on and give her a bow and kind of stare at it again.
She throws her head back and laughs, and the young gentlemen that had come up around you all sort of start chatting with each other and then dart off in various directions.
Am I married to get like a ton of shiny things?
And they return shortly with similar rings in gold, silver, platinum, and alloys that you're not actually familiar with, set with precious and semi-precious stones in extremely delicate sort of settings and filigrees, and show them off to you one by one, pushing them into your hand.
Have I been watching these proceedings?
Oh,
so I say, are we at all concerned that some, if not all, of these are proposals?
Uh, that thought honestly didn't cross my mind. And then I say this as I'm like pulling off some of my other rings to trade out, knowing that they're not inferior craftsmanship. But upon that, I probably pull out the canvas and charcoal and do my best to indicate that I'm a forge mistress. So I probably draw like an anvil and a hammer, and then point to all the rings on my hands and then myself, and then kind of gesture to the rings they're handing me and make the how, where hand gesture again.
They seem to understand and they nod enthusiastically, and one of the young men and the young woman both take your arm on either side by the elbow and lead you off toward what you're not sure at first, but eventually does turn out to be a forge. An extremely elaborate looking one. It has less of the sort of raw force in terms of like a large furnace and a big sturdy anvil, and a lot more of delicate tools than you're used to seeing. And suddenly the mystery of the quality filigree on the outsides of farmers' homes is solved. This isn't even the first one of these that you passed by on the way. In the meantime, however, Dusk, you are probably sticking back in the town square, if not by choice, then because a number of what you probably assume are village elders have sort of come up to you and are trying to communicate with you through gesture and speaking what for them counts as slowly. You manage to convey that you are here to trade over there in the city, and they sort of nod and sort of gesture at your clothes and gesture at what seems to be kind of a way house, for travel around the lake, and you eventually understand that what they are asking is if they can have some of the articles of your clothing in exchange for beds and meals for the night.
Well, I definitely, we've established, have spare gloves, so I extract from one of my pockets a glove that is just as ridiculous as the ones I'm wearing. And I think the ones I'm wearing, one is blue leather, and one is some kind of velvety something. So this would be leather as well, but like a bright unnatural yellow, which would not do well with actual work, but looks very flashy for special occasions.
So out of curiosity, do you have one of these gloves?
I definitely don't have a pair of any given color.
I thought so. So you pull out the glove and they sort of like, but one of the villagers sort of is like tracing his finger down it, and then runs a finger over your chlamys, which is not of wool, which all of the cloth you've seen since you've arrived here is of wool. I will say it's probably of like linen, maybe. And you right, and you sort of like pull out like a very delicate kind of woven linen glove and show it, and they go, oh yeah, and you're recognizing the affirmative now in this language, and they sort of look at either and start to talk about amongst themselves about it, and gesture you toward sort of the way house, and beckon you in. Where there is very hearty mutton stew with unfamiliar vegetables in it, as well as what appears to be a local fruit wine. It's definitely not made of grapes, but you're not sure what it is made of. It tastes lovely. In the meantime, Lissa, the youths that have been so very impressed with you are basically just kind of like pointing at and then demonstrating the use of various things around this forge, and the young woman is in the process of making another ring, and one of the young men sort of gestures you to sort of another set of tools. It's like,
oh, I absolutely go for it. And I probably do my best to express my excitement and clap my hands together and just you know, I am in my element right now.
For sure. So before we have you roll knowledge plus student blacksmith, you note that they have iron, tin, they have copper, you have the standards. They have an anomalous amount of gold, silver, and platinum, as well as a few ingots of alloy that you're actually not super familiar with, just kind of hanging around. This would be a relatively, like, prosperous, but still not amazingly wealthy farming village back in the Vales. Nobody in one of those villages has ever seen platinum. They have 4 ingots of platinum in this one workshop, as well as a cabinet full of precious and semi-precious stones. Only a few diamonds, but a lot of things like aventurine and topaz.
I am so happy right now.
I wish, more than ever before in this campaign, I wish you could see Robin's face, dear listener.
I probably gesture to, I figured the platinum is probably the safest thing of the metals that I've never touched before, and try to gesture to my own rings, what's left of them, what I have not traded off for baubles, and my hair, and kind of do my best to indicate that I've never worked with this metal before and would be thrilled to have a go at it.
A young man with sort of white blonde hair cut short atop his head and sort of like ice blue eyes. One of the taller, sort of in this, grins and darts over to you with an ingot of platinum. He uses the heat from the furnace and some specialized tools to sort of shear off just a little bit of it, setting the rest to the side, and proceeds to demonstrate for you kind of, the best practices for working with it, and just sort of tends to point things out and like make pantomimes and let you do it. So this would be a good time to roll knowledge blacksmith, 2 plus a master die.
Whew! It's gonna be 2 10s.
Very nice. So you take a while. It's probably an hour and a half after the young woman has finished her ring, which is of sterling silver and lapis lazuli. But when you finish, what you have,
can I describe?
is...
I have
Yes.
a ring in mind.
Go for it.
So I imagine that I tried to make a snake coiling around itself, with its mouth on its own tail and 2 garnet eyes, if they allow me to set it with small garnets.
Mm-hmm. They do. Yeah. They actually have quite a few garnets. Only 1 ruby, but quite a few garnets. And they let you use some small garnets, and you finish this, and sort of quench it, getting on into the evening, honestly. But there's cheering when you finish it. And the young woman presents you with the ring she's just made, and sort of holds out a hand.
I present her with the ring I just made in kind, and hope this is not a proposal.
Well, you're worried for a moment, because a round of applause goes up from the young men, and the young woman leans forward and kisses you on the lips. Not like a full deep kiss, but, definitely like a mark of pretty profound affection in Taraxas. Your worry ebbs a little bit as the young men
line up,
then follow suit.
Yes!
It does not appear as though you have betrothed yourself to anybody. They are just... this is a relatively common gesture, it would appear, if not a casual one.
I enjoy myself immensely all the same.
Diamakar. Yeah. So in the meantime, Dusk, what have you been up to back at the Sway House?
Other than making sure that whenever Lissa's done at the forge, she'll also get mutton and a place to sleep, I've probably just been attempting to still figure out how to communicate with people. So I've been having enormously awkward conversations with anybody who's willing to converse with me. And I may even have been spending energy and time worrying that Lissa is betrothed to at least half a dozen people by now.
So your primary occupation as you sort of while away at the time here is in chatting with the person who appears to tend this way house. You're not sure if it's like an owner, manager, overseer. There is help, but they don't seem to necessarily take orders from the person in charge. They just kind of like do. It's sort of a communal effort here at this village, which is honestly not that different from smaller villages in the Vales and Taraxas. It's a little distinct, but mostly in the details. The person who seems to be mostly in charge, kind of manning the food and drink, is a woman of middle years, solidly built with curly, sort of dirty blonde hair, starting to go to gray, and a lot of laugh lines and sort of smile creases in her face, who is absolutely enthralled by exchanging words with you. Like, she'll put a bottle of fruit wine up on the bar and say the local word for wine, and then look at you and wants to learn your word for wine, and then points to like a bowl, right, and says her word for it, and you say your word for it, and you're starting to sort of get a sense of at least how to refer to things. By the time Lissa is escorted back to the Way House by her young friends, who are raucous as ever. You have a nice little, repertoire of nouns and even a few pantomimed action verbs. And for what it's worth, Lissa, these people are mostly between 3 and 5 years younger than you, not, children per se, but definitely young.
Okay. The girl is still in her 20s though, right?
Yes, she's among the older. She and the fair-haired, blue-eyed boy who showed you how to use the tools are among.
So by the time Lissa comes in, I'm able to, like an insufferable exchange student who spent a summer somewhere, I'm able to ask Lissa if she and her friends would like some wine, but using the local word for it.
Galicia.
Oh, and I say it with like Galicia, like whatever sound is foreign to me, I hit it really hard, like somebody, like a white person asking if you want a tortilla, right? Like it's
the woman who's been teaching you all of this laughs very loudly and claps her hands. You have learned in the meantime, although it took a little while to get around to it, that her name is Hila.
Hila? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I say to Lissa that Hila here has been teaching me a great deal. I'm probably a little bit drunk at this point from the number of repetitions it took for me to learn wine and bowl and glove and whatever else I've learned.
Yeah. Their local wine is very sweet by your standards.
So yeah, gone straight to my head then. And I ask Lissa, was it successful? And are you unmarried?
I hold up my both hands that are now, I'm sure, I have the new ring from my friend and the rings that Dosk saw me trade for earlier, and smile and say, I'm pretty sure I am unbetrothed, but I've learned a new thing or two, and I got to work with platinum, and they have these other alloys, and I just go off describing the forge that I was just able to work in and all the tools and what I learned. And kind of mimic the hand gestures as I go along, so my friends know that I'm describing my experience with high praise.
While you are doing all of this, at various points, your little posse, your fan club, sort of laughs at some points and cheers at some points, and about halfway through it, when you point to the ring that the young lady gave you, the young man who showed you how to make yours just matter-of-factly plops himself in your lap and doesn't seem to think much of it. Although it gets a bit of a laugh from his friends. So you're not sure if you're being made fun of or not.
Yeah. I just kind of shrug and put a hand on his shoulder in a friendly way, like not innately flirtatious, just in case they are messing with me.
This gets another comparatively gentle laugh from the peanut gallery, at which point he sort of leans back and like kicks up his legs and then gets up and kind of pats you on the shoulder, at which point Gila shoos them out of the way house.
I wave and say thank you and bye, which I'm sure some of the basic words I've hopefully picked up by this point in time.
You have an approximation at least.
I step in if I can, if I can at
back
all
at you.
use some of the extravagant new, like elementary school level vocabulary I've been learning. I say, she says goodbye, whatever.
One of the younger fellows in this group repeats your she says goodbye, but very slowly and at a very loud volume. You get the feeling that you're being mocked, especially when the rest of them kind of chuckle and then head for the door. It seems relatively good-natured, though.
To be derided and yet understood. I'm at home.
So in relatively short order, Lissa, you're fed, and Gila is sort of like ushering you out, up towards your beds, and you turn in for the evening, unless there's anything you wanted to make sure to do before you fell asleep.
Contemplate my new ring.
It is beautiful. The delicacy of the work is something that you really wouldn't find in Taraxas.
Yeah, it makes me kind of think of Taraxas a bit, and also, namely, the situation that I left. Oh gosh, why do I always forget if it's Kaya or Kaya?
Kaya.
It makes me think of the situation that I left Kaya in. So I probably, and this may open us up to another, like, mechanical function of this game that we haven't touched on yet. I probably concentrate and see if there's a way that I can get a sense of what's going on in Fermata.
Oh, interesting. So this would actually be a realm divination.
Ooh, I was also thinking of anchors. Since Varric is around.
That's right. Varric is in Fermata. That's true. So we haven't talked about anchors very much so far. But they are mortals that a nobilis either loves or hates. And if we make new anchors during the course of this campaign, we'll talk about that process. But upon their ennobling, both of our nobilis here had some anchors that just kind of came with them. So in this case, then, you are able, at will, with sufficient concentration, to leave your own senses behind and simply share Varric's. You don't necessarily, at that stage, have any control over his actions or anything, but you can see what he sees, hear what he hears, etc., if you wish. So you close your eyes and you focus on Fermata and on wanting to know what's going on there. And you're surprised to find how easy it is just to send your senses out, although you quickly discover that you're not doing it in such a general sense. You are sort of pulled into one perspective, and it only takes you a moment to realize that it is Varric, based on the sound of his voice coming out from what you feel at the moment to be your mouth. Having a beard is strange to you.
I just unconsciously scratched my face. Is there any way for me to signal to him? I feel very weirded out by this. Does not seem at all consensual that I'm currently hijacking his view.
Yeah, it is definitely strange to you. So roll a sense plus empathy to see if you can intuit what to do here. That's 3 dice.
use my lady luck trick too soon. That's a 7. Darn. No pairs.
All right. You're a little bewildered. This is a new and strange experience to you, although it feels weirdly comfortable on a certain level. It is novel enough that you're a little overwhelmed, and you're not sure how to communicate with him here. For our listeners, that would be something that somebody who made an anchor on purpose would be able to do, but we are playing with some nobilis whose imperator is less than communicative, so they are learning the ropes as they go.
We did this to ourselves.
Yeah, we did. Does everything seem to be all right? I imagine he's in a pub. Like, what can I glean from what I'm currently seeing?
By looking around, it seems like it's later in Fermata than it is where you are. Seems to be in his room. He is actually doing a little bit of trimming of his beard. His room is a semi-permanent residence kind of above one of his favorite taverns, and he's just kind of like humming to himself as he finds stray beard hairs to sort of like clean up with a razor and some scissors.
When the razor and some scissors are not close to his face, I try to say his name.
Ooh, interesting. Let me make a roll. Okay. You try to say his name, and he goes, "Lass, is that you? Where are you?"
Varric? I don't panic, but I think I am seeing through your eyes somehow.
He immediately looks down briefly and then closes his eyes and goes, "Oh God." He's not naked, but he is shirtless, and he's very, very embarrassed about it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that this could happen.
That makes 2 of us, lass. I suppose it's fine. Well, this is new. How can I help you?
I just wanted to make sure that all was well in Fermata. We found a new land, and the people are really nice, and they taught me some excellent tricks with the forge, and I got to use platinum.
Oh, aye, that's exciting. Bring some back for me, I guess. I mean, hang on, new land. Like, I'm not sure what you mean.
We love Taraxans.
Congratulations. What, into the Shadowed Lands? Into the Wastes? Where'd you go?
Across the ocean.
Across the ocean? There's no across the ocean, lass.
But there sure is. we got a boat, and we made it across the ocean, and there's people here in this land of, oh gosh, more pronunciations. What is it?
I mean, I would say pronounce it however you try to, and that's how Lissa pronounces it.
Damacor?
Pretty close, honestly.
Okay, good.
And he says, "Well, fancy that. You're a ways afield. And so fast. Well, I'll be a trout's aunt."
I should hope not. It'd be hard to forge.
Yeah, it's worth noting that this is not something that people just like say in Laurentid. He's always been a little bit of a folksy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alyssa always refers back to, or responds back to his little isms as though they're completely literal.
He's used to it. He says, "Well, suppose what can I do for you, lass?"
There was a problem in Fermata when we left of various people becoming afraid of the dark. Do you happen to know how Kea, the barmaid, is doing?
"Oh, I'm afraid not, lass. I haven't seen her around in a little while. I hope that means she's all right. But, no, I haven't run into anyone in my work at the forge or my drinking here at the tavern that seems to be afraid of the dark. That'd be heavy stuff here in Fermata. It's not like there's much light, frankly. It's a little oppressive, but I do all right."
Yeah, I'm happy to see you whole and hale.
"Oh, I am doing all right. I thank you for getting me settled. It's been an adjustment, but I've proven myself at the forge, and I think I'm making a place for myself here. I look forward to being able to practice my craft regularly. It's relaxing, being at the forge.
I'll try to bring you a thing or two back. I've got some new rings, and I hold my hands up or try without realizing the weirdness of this.
He has no idea, but Dosk, if you're around, you see her hold her hands up.
And so I'll try to bring you back some of the metals and alloys and gemstones that they have here.
Well, it sounds like a land of milk and honey, lass, and I hope you do all right there. I'm looking forward to seeing what you bring back, but I wish I'd have known you were going so far afield. How long will it be until I see you again?
I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happened very quickly. First, Kea kind of fell through a window and was afraid of the dark, so I had to take her for medical care. But as I was picking her up, I was in a lot of pain because the thing in the fury, my domain, was under attack, and it was blinding agony. It almost brought me down to my knees. So we're trying to fix that so I don't have to live with this migraine anymore. And Varric, I'm worried because it seems to be coming from the people here, and they're all so nice, and I'm not comfortable with any of this, but listen to me getting all stressed out over a wonderful situation. It's the most beautiful land I've ever seen, and I wish you could see it. And I kind of try to paint him a word picture of the veil, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, aye, that sounds lovely, lass. I must say I'm feeling some fury on your behalf at the attack on you there, but hopefully you can figure out a way around it. I believe you can. You've always had a good head on your shoulders, and, and then his voice sounds a little far away. As long as you don't lose your temper, anyway. But I'm sure you'll be fine. I mean, you got that nice young man with you, Dask, seems to have a good head on his shoulders. He's a little airheaded maybe, but he seems to know what he's about, and I believe the two of you can do it. It'll be fine. I'll try to have something for you from the forge when you come back.
Oh, I would love that. I'm sorry for suddenly appearing inside of your head. I usually would have tried to ask, but I didn't even know it was something that could happen. But I just wanted to check in.
You and I are both learning things about this new life every day. Did you know that some of the residents of Fermata use magic? Did you know that? Because I didn't.
Dusk's boyfriend had a smoking void skull effect going on the last time we saw him.
The prophet!
Yes.
Yeah, I saw him recently. He's a strong fashion statement, that, for sure. But yeah, there's more people I've met recently, actually, who just can snap their fingers and poof, their clothes are clean or whatever. It's gotta learn me how to do that.
You should. I think that would serve you nicely, Varric. But I'm gonna catch some sleep over here, so I'm gonna try to leave your head. But I miss you and I love you, and I wanted to let you know that everything's okay.
Oh, I love you too, lass. I hope you're well over there and that you make it back safely. I wish I'd gotten word when you were leaving, but I guess it's a busy life for a god.
I was in a lot of pain. Also, definitely not a god. Definitely no. Varric.
6 of one, half dozen of the other. Goddess, I guess, but you'll do well, lass.
Thank you. And I just try to leave him be, get back to shaving, let him get back to shaving.
It takes you an awkward moment, but you do manage to sort of slingshot back into your own head. And you think it'll be easier next time.
Yeah.
Have we been at the bar this whole time? Physically?
I was assuming that you were up in your quarters at this point.
just for the listener, if we had been at the bar, then from the moment Lissa held her hands up, I would have been asking, what's that metal called? What's that metal called? But okay.
You probably have been doing that the whole time while I've been having this conversation with Ferric.
Practicing, let's say practicing, oblivious. Whichever ones I have learned, and then when I get to one of the alloys we have no word for, just sort of shrugging and wondering. But most urgently, I ask you, what just happened?
Well, and for what it's worth, you saw her gestures, but she was not speaking aloud when she was speaking to Varric.
I was just still talking with my hands, though, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, bodily movements you did, and like changes in position of your head you did, but expressions and words didn't come through.
I was just in Mr. Varric's head.
In his, you could tell what he was thinking, doing back in Fermata.
I could see through his eyes, and it was an opportune time, but I'm trying to erase that from my memory still.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I could see Fermata, and I just made sure that everything was in order, but he hasn't heard anything about Kea. And I just kind of trail off.
She's having the best of care. I bet she'll be fine. Can you do that?
News is that
can you do that with her?
I could try. I know the answer to that.
I do, but Dask doesn't.
Listen.
Yes.
Lissa will attempt.
Yeah, you try to send your mind out again, and nothing really happens.
I don't think I can.
Huh. I briefly wonder
How about you try it?
I mean, sure. The first thing I do is reach for Kea. I, as a player, know that's not going to happen.
You reach for Kea, and you definitely don't get anything there, but you kind of flail about when you realize that nothing's happening. Like, am I doing it right? I don't know. Oh god, I don't know. And then you find that you are looking out of a window in the confluence at the ocean.
Oh god.
And you hear, what? Who's there? Did somebody say something? And your vision sort of darts around a little bit.
I didn't clarify, so I'd see if presumably Vruta can hear me. This hello is Dask.
Wait. Sheffel? What? Where are
you? Not there. And yes, Sheffel, if you prefer. How have you been?
Wait, no. Where are you? Where did you go? You left. You're not supposed to leave. Where?
Did you know? Know? I bet you didn't. The books there never mentioned it, but there's a great deal north of where you are. There's a lot. There's more. That's where I am. How are you?
But I was fine. Now I'm freaking out a little bit, if I'm being honest. How am I hearing you? You're not here. You're not in my room. Oh, shut up. You hear him yelling at a roommate.
Okay, that's a fair question. More than fair. I think I'm in you, actually. Some things have changed, and I think perhaps you and I share a connection. We always shared a connection. You know that. That was a stupid thing to say. I think we share a different kind of connection now.
Well, don't I get any say in it? Why are you in my head? Why am I not in your head? That seems like more fun. And fairer, frankly.
Agreed on all counts. Maybe that's possible. I don't know how to do it, though. That's not to say it's impossible. There are all sorts of things I used to think were impossible that I can just do now. That's not the point. I'm sorry. This makes it more unfair. How are you?
Well, I was better before you just started talking in my head.
Sure, of course.
How is this happening?
Well, I'm safe, and
when are you coming back?
I yeet out of his head.
And you're back in your own head.
So, I can't find Kea, but I can find a very nice monk I used to know. It seems to be people we're connected to in some way or another. Person? One per people? I don't know. But anyway, that was no useful information. I just ruined a very nice young man's night.
Alyssa probably chuckles to herself and says, well, at least you didn't see your dad naked.
I go...
For the record, he was not naked. He was shirtless.
Yes.
He was embarrassed.
Yes. I should...
Just clarifying for the listener.
Nobody was naked. So far as I was aware, he wasn't looking. Maybe someone was naked. That's not the point. The point is we seem to be connected. So that's good to know. Though not helpful at the moment. Oh God, I really freaked him out. We're going to have to go back there. I'm going to have to go back there at some point. I don't want to make this your problem. He didn't think I've explained this to you. No one leaves, but I left. So he's concerned, outraged, angry, concerned, all of those.
I could see how it might be slightly terrifying if you left a place that no one leaves and then randomly returned in his head. You should definitely make sure he knows he's sane at some point in the future.
Lissa, you cut off after future because the pain coming from fury suddenly is subsumed in a wash of relief. There is an eruption of fury in the near sort of field, I guess you might call it, somewhere within the vicinity of this village. And you just, without even intending it, your head whips in the direction upslope toward the forest, through the orchards. And about 2 seconds later, you start to hear voices yelling and screaming from that area. And that's where we'll end our session for today. You can both get a mortal experience point for this session.
Good stuff. Do I get anything because I was, pursuing my curiosity with a intense fervor?
So I would say, let me double check where that falls on your character sheet. That is a craving. So I fudged the rules a little bit about cravings. When pursuing the craving causes problems for you, it results in bonus XP. But given that you're trying to learn a language, I will give you the opportunity here to use your experience point from this session along with your craving experience point to gain a skill in Diamok, if you would like.
Yeah.
At 2 dice. You have to use both if you want to get it. So instead of getting an experience point, you'll simply get 2 points in language.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fair draw. Sign me up.
Okay. Otherwise, pursuing your craving, your mission, or your duty can give you bonus dice on rolls. We were very thin on the ground on rolls this episode, which, I think was fair enough for what we were doing. But it will be up to you guys to remember to remind me about those bonuses when they apply. But in this case, yes, you can get, it didn't exactly cause you problems, but if you're willing to spend it with your session XP, I will definitely allow you to gain a language skill in Diamok.
This is that good negotiation that we thank you for. We were editing what it's called at the same time, Diamok. Let the record show that what Adam was editing on my character sheet was I had it written down as Diamochorian ? Cool.
Well, as you get better at the language, you will get better at knowing what the words
That's
for things
reasonable.
are, so.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So now that you have this, for the record, what you will end up doing is rolling 4 knowledge plus 2 dice when you wish to communicate. And the wider that set is, the faster you arrive at an understanding. The higher it is, the better your understanding
Cool.
is. So that is something for our listeners to look out for.
Well, that's awesome.
normally we would not handle XP expenditure at the end of a session, but I figured that since you were making a concerted effort throughout the session to use your 0 experience points remaining to gain a skill, that was fair. You actually got a little bit of a discount on it. It would have been 3 to get to 2 points, but since you used a miraculous roll on it, I figured I would.
Plus, I have a master die in haggle, so I'm haggling even for my mortal attributes.
Metagame haggling.
Yeah, master die and meta haggle. Cool. Goodness. All right.
Yeah. But that will also just smooth our journey going forward, as well as we next time investigate what that disturbance would have been. So that concludes this session of Dice Punks. Thank you for joining us, and I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to us, but you can find us almost any place where one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. Say goodbye to the kind folks at home. Players.
Thanks for listening, and do let your friend know you're the crazy one, if in fact you're the crazy one. I gotta get in touch with Ruta.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, if you like it, put a ring on it.
And as the poet once said, do they speak my language? Will they come my way?
You're both killing me.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff. There's a very fun Doskfacht with Drew waiting for you at the end of it. The songs in this episode, Theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Duke, scratch that, the Regal of Nothing himself, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who will be behind the scenes for the time being, but played Rue the Gremlin in our Psionics one-shot. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind the irrepressible Lissa, the Duchess of Fury. Rain and the one-roll engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in, well, a frankly astonishing number of cool places, but I'll point you toward gregstolze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran and can be found alongside much of her other really intriguing work both in and outside of tabletop role-playing at afarandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that's reward enough on its own, really. But if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks after show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
Today, a little more family lore. My great-great-grandmother's second husband ended up taking the family name, taken as he was with the merchant life. Monsetir came from somewhere north of the Shadowed Lands. He'd never say quite where, only that he'd met great-great-grandmother Stygian when she'd visited his home country, and that the match had not been precisely approved of by the high aristocrats to whom he'd been born. But that's a story for another day, is what he'd say. That was always, I'm told, a story for another day. Anyway, when things settled, the two of them ushered in a tremendously prosperous period for the Tyr family. Maybe made us what we are. I think that might be fair to say. Not least because great-grandfather Mansa had a relentless restlessness to him. Enough was never enough and all that. When he was 85, and his wife of 60 years died, he made some quip about drying his tears. Grandfather Croesus always told this part with a wince, but he always told it. And Mansa boarded a small ship and sailed off somewhere. I've met at least a dozen sailors and innkeeps and traders who claim to have met him on that last long voyage. Their stories conflict and cannot all possibly be true, but a few of those yarn spinners were able to produce strange foreign currency, more than a few kinds of metals I'd never seen before. The claim sometimes being that the places in question, the places the coins came from, had never used coins before Mansa arrived. And these coins were styled not after Mansa, but after Stygian.